Well, good evening, everybody. That was a jhalak, just a glimpse of Dr. Gausia Madam addressing her patients and a crowd of people, giving advice on various issues related to autism. Presenting Dr. Gausia Madam. Madam, can you please put your video on? Yes, doctor. Can you please put your video on? It is the upper left button. Yeah, thank you very much, doctor. So that is Dr. Gausia, madam. So before I hand over the session to madam, let me do a little bit of onboarding and some interesting information and insights on the topic of today and the presenters for today's evening. So welcome everybody for this international webinar. I'm Sunil Chuplunkar. We are from Group Pharmaceuticals, and we are happy to partner Garonda and also talk on this topic called, which is very, very important, and it relates to children. Now, there is a very interesting quote which says, children, birds, flowers, if they are all fine in this world, then everything is okay. There's nothing to fear, right? When we talk about children, what are all the issues that come to our head? It's about effective parenting. We want to do effective parenting. We want them to grow healthy. We want to give the children a good environment, good food, and ensure that they get good education and they have a lovely career and life for them ahead, isn't it? So that's common to everybody. Well, we need a lot of support for all these aspects, especially when there are certain challenging situations. And Dr. Gausia is like a messiah who is doing a lot of good activities in this sphere. We'll be knowing something about it. So, what are all the challenging situations that come forth? Many a times there will be the chance that the kid may suffer a little or more of this ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So that's an intervention where doctor's help is required. Now, there could also be some finicky eating habits. Now, that's also a challenging thing. What if the kid is eating too much of Maggie and not taking to any healthy food? Now, that's also become a big burden on parents today, especially when both are working parents. And what if the kid is a slow learner? Nothing wrong, right, in all these things. But these are all the situations. And if the child is having what is called as autism spectrum disorder, then how do you do it? How do you deal with that situation? How do you normalize the child into a mainstream living? Yes, today social media addiction has become a major issue. We all know about how kids can go on a self-destructive pathway just by getting hooked onto various games or social media and so on. So the socialization challenges are also there. Sometimes kids are not forthcoming. They don't go and mix well with other kids or in the parents. So that social challenge is also there. Autism is when a flower doesn't bloom. So that time you don't, spoil the flower, but you fix the environment in which it grows. So earlier this was called as Asperger's syndrome, but many other aspects on it will be dealt with by Dr. Madam. So this autism basically affects the nerve cells of the brain. So basically it causes impaired socialization. That is how it is felt outwards. So there are a lot of other subtle things which we will come to know as we listen to Madam speaking on this subject. So this is a pervasive personality disorder, otherwise not specified, and many a times it is diagnosed between the ages of 2 and 3. So this is a disorder which leads to difficulty in the socialization, behavioral skill, as well as in speech. We pharmacists are also responding to the challenge of autism. There are very good or useful drugs available, such as risperidone, which was first approved by US FDA. Then there are so many other drugs also used: aripiprazole, haloperidol, clozapine, sertraline, and even oxytocin. Oxytocin is administered because it is known as a happy hormone in certain amounts, which improves the socialization skill. And methylphenidate is quite well known to pharmacists because we have learned that this is useful even in ADHD. So when there is frequent patient contact, the pharmacist is the most accessible healthcare professional. Obviously, he will be the individual to communicate to the patient and advise on which type of doctor to go for, including Dr. Gausia Madam, who specializes in offering excellent service to autism-related cases for management of oral health. Now, that's a very important point because, the mouth is the gateway to health. We also observe some interesting insights here. We all know about E is equal to mc squared, right? So that is Einstein. This is a sitter. But Einstein was renowned for his intelligence between, above 100. Almost he was considered to be a genius nearer to 160. There are certain experts who believe he may have been suffering from Asperger syndrome because of his eccentricity and his inability to socialize. In fact, the late talkers are also said to suffer from Einstein syndrome because Einstein himself did not speak until he was 3. His speech development was slow. And they also were fascinated to observe that till the age of 7, he would only whisper words. In fact, he had to be taken off from school because they said that he is not up to the mark. And Albert Einstein was fixated on interests and he didn't join with the other kids. He was actually an average student, but he excelled in maths and science. He found it hard to make friends and preferred to be alone. Einstein was very shy and he did not have many romantic interests. Of course, he had a very wicked sense of humor. He would say, when you're courting a nice girl, an hour seems like a second. But when you sit on a red hot coal, a second seems like an hour. Now that's relativity. That is how he explained relativity. He found language and communication very difficult to master. Einstein became notorious for giving confusing lectures and he never felt comfortable giving speeches. He would often forget and he became the typical absent minded professor. So it is also well known that many people with autism have got an extraordinary talent for understanding complex things like computers, music, and science. So this is an unusual thing. So why I'm indicating is that Einstein was also having these sort of behavioral profiles, and he would have intense focus and he would focus his thoughts on some particular aspect for a long period of time. He was a free spirit, wild, unruly hair, and sloppy clothes. And while researchers speculate that Einstein may have had autism, the truth will not be known because it's difficult to diagnose such things from biographical information. But in any case, there are so many individuals who are suspected or probably thought to have the autism spectrum, like Dan Aykroyd, Alexis, Adam Young, Isaac Newton, Mozart, and Einstein, of course. So the typical child avoids eye contact, he lines up the objects, he likes routine, he is either hyperactive or passive, and so on. So, dental care is the leading unmet healthcare need among children with special needs. And that's where people like Dr. Gausia Madam come in. She is passionate about oral care, dental practice for challenging situations. In this, I mean these specially challenged kids. If you look at her description, it's really a very interesting thing, which I have put it in other slides. As you can see, she is a mastery in pediatric and preventive dentistry. She is also well known for child psychology and child behavioral management skills for children with special needs. And she describes herself as a sensory informed pediatric dentist with inclusive practice for children with special healthcare needs and palliative oral care. She practices at Dental Healthcare and Research Unit, Garonda, Hosmat, Hennur. Dr. Gausia Madam is an ex-associate professor certified in conscious sedation from Vikarabad. She is an externee pediatric psychology from NIMANS. She is certified in sign language and she is certified for early intervention program for children in autism. And she has an online interactive course treating patients with autism in dental settings. You can see her in action here in some of the photos because she has done a lot of work. She has gained a fellowship in palliative care from Kidwai, senior consultant fellow Apollo White. She did her BDS and MDS right here at Bangalore, that is Ambedkar Dental College. And she is an editorial board member at American Journal of Medical and Dental Sciences and many other such good international journals of good standing. She is a reviewer of articles for several, almost a dozen journals. Very good journals indeed they are. And Madam has number of publications in national and international journals. So here you can see some in-action photos where she is recommending and performing the oral care therapy to several of our patients. And she is also a prolific speaker, eloquence. So she gives talks. She ensures that people understand how to treat with the oral health issues relating to her problem and so on. So her professional goals is to treat the special or differently abled pediatric patients for improved oral health, management of cleft patients, as well as speech defect children, and she is in the super specialty in pediatric dentistry. So that is why Dr. Gausia Begum is, feted everywhere, and people really salute her. The other co-presenter will be Dr. Nair Firdos, who is joining us straight from Saudi Arabia, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Now, Dr. Nair himself is also a very interesting personality. Not only is a oral and maxillofacial surgeon with focus on cosmetic and facial surgery and so on, he's got many patents to his credit, like the Nair Z retractor, Nair Z shield, and he's doing several inventive things to improve the way dentistry is practiced. And along with Dr. Gausia Madam, they have published many papers. Like, for example, this is the one, Understanding the Misunderstood, an enigma called autism. And they have also uh, did a poster presentation, as you can see, and he's also working on a novel drug delivery system on nanomedicine. You can also call him as a sure success man because he has written several sure success series on various topics like oral medicine, oral radiology, and so on. So really, he is also surely on a successful pathway, and he is a tremendously interesting personality with several academic qualifications to his credit. And he is also a product from Karnataka, where he studied at Yenapoya University in Bangalore. And he was in Bangalore for his BDS at Krishnadevaraya Dental College and Hospital. So currently, he is an associate consultant at Saudi Arabia. And these are his in action photos where Dr. Nair is performing various types of surgical interventions. So we at Group Pharmaceuticals salute the doctors, dentists, because they are creating healthy smiles and laughter. We offer a roster of products like Shy XT, Shy NM, Elsense, and also there are interesting products like Omnident, which all these dentists recommend to their patients. Our products support a wide spectrum of patients, including the specially requirements wherever they are. We offer that too to them. So please avoid the contact greetings and the take home messages. A dentist does not take away your dental pain alone. His or her contribution is life changing. So definitely be in constant touch with your dentist. Go visit your dentist regularly, who will boost your smile value and confidence. So over to Dr. Gausia Madam, who is having a professional goal to treat special or differently abled pediatric patients for improved oral health. I think she is doing a great service by coming on to our platform. And over to you, Dr. Gausia Madam. Thank you very, very much for coming in. Yes, you can speak, ma'am. You can unmute your audio, please. Upper second button. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, continue, ma'am.
So that was quite a and all the background you have done on it. I can see some of the pictures which were not, I don't know from where you found all of them. So that was a good background. Your research and development team is supposedly very good, sir. So shall we start with the presentation, sir?
Yes, over to you.
Hello.
Yes, yes, madam.
Yes.
Over to you.
I'm sharing the screen.
Yes. So madam is sharing the screen, so it will be a coordinated approach from Dr. Nair in Saudi Arabia as well as madam from Bangalore. So just hold on, the screen sharing is happening.
It is taking some time.
Yeah.
I apologize for the technical delay. I'm trying it again.
Yes, yes. It will happen now, ma'am.
But the corona is teaching a lot of patience. We're not used to the computers. We were used to
Okay.
patience demand, patience, and then this is still.
You have to go to the screen share, madam, and you have to tick the application window. That screen share application window. Or shall I host the presentation which we have loaded onto the webinar jam?
So I'll just get
You
that.
try, you give it a last try. You go to the screen share, ma'am,
Yes, sir.
and you click the second button. It did work well in the trial run, but now, of course, technical glitches, you
Yes,
never
it
know.
works.
So that's just to give a word or two of assurance to the audience here. We have done 2 trials. It was fine in that. So probably in this all reals, there is a challenge, technical
I just.
challenge.
I think you should join the webinar. Please. Yeah, please join the web channel, please. I'm not able to.
That's
I,
Dr. Nair from there.
yes, sir. I'm just asking him to.
Or you don't worry, we are having your presentation here in the webinar jam.
Can we just disconnect and connect it back, sir?
No, I cannot do it. You have to do it, ma'am, in case you want to do it.
I just. Can you screen share it, sir? It's possible.
No, I can host
Can,
your presentation, ma'am, straight away. You give me the green signal, I'll host it. You can start with that.
hello. Can you come on TeamViewer, please? Don't. Yeah, please. Because in
Madam,
YouTube
your fine
picture.
presentation is here, no problem. Madam, if screen share is not working, I can this thing host the webinar jam presentation.
Yes, sir. Can I
Yes,
share
madam.
it now?
Yeah, you put your video
I'm
on,
so sorry
madam.
for the delay, sir.
Yeah.
So I prefer keeping it off
Okay, done. You please share it.
because the animation.
Yes, yes.
Okay. We start now.
Yes, yes, please
Because I
start.
apologize for the time delay already. I had a
No
technical
problem.
snag.
Please start.
So this is again my introduction put here. I was not aware that Mr. Sunil will be introducing me so well. So this is some of the few places which I have been fortunate enough to gain some precious and valuable learnings. So that has already been spoken. So we move on to our co-presenter.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all those joining us from various parts of the globe. I am Dr. Nair Firdaus, consultant maxillofacial surgeon and clinical director of the Oral Healthcare. And Research Unit at Garonda. We at our unit provide specialist care and advise on treatment for special needs patients suffering from oral conditions which are beyond the scope of general dentists. And our comprehensive oral care program is extended for individuals who are mentally, physically, and intellectually compromised and who also need backup facilities of a hospital. Today, I, together with Dr. Kausia, will be providing you with an overview of sensory smart oral health care for those who are involved with special bundles of joy. You can write to us at dorondadhcu@gmail.com. Over to you, Dr. Kausia.
Yeah, so moving on to the topic today. So have we ever come across, running mosquito irritating us maximum? Some people are not bothered, and for few of us are exaggerated, and it's as painful. And the screeching sound of the chalk. Have you ever wondered why it is non-bothersome for few and extremely painful and hurtful for few of us? So likewise, since we're dentists, we narrow down our thinking to the oral healthcare. So when you seat a child on a chair, even before you do anything, when the child is sitting on the chair, he starts yelling and crying. So you wonder why at times. But you wouldn't have realized that you're changing of the position of the chair, or you're switching off the light, switching on the light, or even your previous syringe airway, or even just your suction sound or the compressor sound is overwhelmed the child, and the reaction is therefore followed. So you wonder and sit back and understand that the child is obviously having a challenging behavior. So we are also talking about autism, as already Mr. Sunil has spoken about autism very wonderfully. So I would take the privilege of just narrowing it down, my presentation, that's our presentation with Dr. Nair, to the oral sensory system. So the sensory issues which are, into these children especially. So it is categorized as sensory processing disorder. Now, sensory processing disorder very recently has been established as a single clinical entity, though it is not involved or included in the diagnostic statistic manual yet, but then it would be in future very soon, because it itself can stand as a single clinical entity. For now, we would go as being told by the DSM manual, which is followed by most of the psychiatrists. So, sensory processing disorder coexists with most of the neurodevelopmental, so the neurodevelopmental disorder kids like autism, ADHD, that is your attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy. All these all the children who are disturbed neurodevelopmentally are exhibiting the sensory processing disorders. Now, sensory processing disorder is very important to dentists because our oral cavity is one of the most richest, the richest zone of the body with the sensory rich. So we will, in the subsequent slide, we would explore that. And I would further ask you all to think now, as we move on with the presentation, I want you to correlate why we are moving or shifting from topics. So we would be, going further and exploring the sensory issues as and when. So we would be dealing with two difficult tasks in the world, if you ask any parent, and that would be, early morning blues, wherein they have to face the ruckus of feeding a child, prior to that brushing the toothbrushes. So any parent or any caregiver who is handling the children, this happens even with the neurotypical. So I would be referring to the neurodevelopmental disorder kid as neurodiverse kids, and the normal kids, which you people call, I would be referring them as neurotypical kids. That would make a sense, because I would not be calling them as otherwise. So the most difficult task for anybody who's caring for children would always find that two different daunting tasks would be early morning toothbrushing as well as feeding. Now, so this unpleasant events in the morning is not only disturbing for the child, for the caregiver or the parent, but also the people around who are witnessing it. So this ultimately would lead to another unpleasant event of force feeding or forced toothbrushing. Now here what happens is child becomes extra overwhelmed because he feels assaulted, and he feels that he is losing control over the situation. So in turn he becomes extraordinarily uncooperative, fidgety, and of no help. So this procedure keeps happening. I mean, unpleasant events keep happening every day, and it is not to be forgotten that feeding and teeth brushing are the activities which are essential for daily living. So they are called as the activities of daily living. Now, most often these are the kids whom we find difficult in managing in the dental clinic. So it is very important for us to find out the medical history, or even the parent interviewing. The daily routine is very important, so as to get a few cues as to how this child would behave in the dental operatory. So if the child is a picky eater or a fussy eater, and then he is a troublesome kid when toothbrushing, and he's not allowing the toothbrushing, so it is definitely an alarming sign for us. That we'll have to accommodate this child in a different manner. Few of the management technique cues have to be changed. But unfortunately, without knowing the reason behind this behavior, we tend to subject these children to something called as pharmacological methods of behavior management, which I don't know if it is appropriate. We would together explore as we move on to the presentation.
As a practicing surgeon for around 2 decades now, I am in a position to observe trends in the patients I have helped treat. In the most recent years, I have seen an exponential increase in children in the operating room for various procedures. A disproportionate number of these children have already been diagnosed with developmental delays and behavioral problems in addition to their medical problems. Now, fear and anxiety are a hand-to-hand problem of more than 50% of pediatric patients. And the trends I have seen should come as no surprise, because children with special needs or disorders have reached epidemic numbers. They are now often called difficult pediatric patients. This is related to a new term. We did not need such a phrase when I started my career. But the anesthesia provider might not realize that he or she needs to look at the metabolic problems in autistic children and consider how these problems might affect the psyche of child who accept the anesthesia mask. The need for medical immobilization, anesthetic choice, and its limitations. The appropriate duration of anesthesia, and of course the advanced behavior guidance towards the patients as well as the child, is a very important factor in handling such patients. The American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry believes that all infants, children, adolescents, and individuals with special needs are entitled to receive oral health care that meets the treatments and ethical principles of our specialty. They also included the use of protective stabilization, which is commonly referred to as physical restraint, and its guidelines on behavior guidance since 1990. Now, the protective stabilization is basically for the physical limitation of a child's movement by a person or restricted equipment and materials or devices for a short period of time in order to safely provide examination, diagnosis, and treatment. Now, when determining whether to recommend use of stabilization or immobilization techniques, the dentist should consider the patient's oral needs as well as emotional and cognitive developmental levels, the medical and physical conditions, and also the parental preferences. Now, socioeconomic status, geographic locations, and ethnic or cultural differences of patients and their parents may influence the parental preference for behavioral management techniques. Approaches, examples such as treatment options or deferral sedation or general anesthesia and their potential impact on the quality of care and the patient's well-being should also be included in the deliberation during the explanation of the treatment planning. Now, the sedation dentistry is used to help patients relax during dental procedures. It's sometimes referred to as sleep dentistry, although that's not entirely accurate. Now, we cannot the children who cannot cooperate due to emotional and cognitive development levels or lack of maturity, sedation is preferred. And whereas the sedation dentistry it helps to minimize the uncontrolled movements during treatment and improving the quality of care, but it never should be used for practitioners' convenience as a mode for quick and complete accomplishment of treatment in less. One of the cornerstones in practicing dentistry, pediatric dentistry, is the ability to guide a child in positively throughout his or her dental experience and encourage a positive dental attitude to improve their oral health. Many classifications of child behavior have been elicited throughout the 1960s, starting from Frankel to the Wright modification to his modification from Wright in the mid-90s, in 1980s, and of course most widely accepted is Frankel's. Now, this Frankel's classification classifies the child behavior according to the child's attitude during dental treatment. Such behavior rating scales are a common component of numerous multi-source frameworks for social and behavior assessment of the children. Now, normally these rating scales are used to determine the degree of which the child exhibits behavior or the quality of that behavior. Each trait is rated up on a continuum. And the observer decides whether the child fits on the scale. Now, having said this, it gets important to assess and evaluate the child's psychological and personal traits along the behavioral responses, as they play a major role in the management of dental anxiety and fear. The reason for a big question mark on this slide is to seek categorical clarity as to how justifiable is it to place a child in any of the categorical scales based on such a low psychometric properties. We as healthcare providers should keep in mind that behavioral rating scales should never be utilized as a sole source of information for the purpose of diagnosis or classification of a specific educational or psychological problems. Now, although the evaluation of the child's behavior serves as an aid in directing individualized behavior guidance approach, facilitating the dental treatment, and provides a means for systematically recording behavior for future appointments. Now, as the assessment of behavior is the most important tool lying in the hands of the dentist, the purpose of the behavioral observation is to facilitate an accurate description and understanding of the child. Furthermore, due to their practical, conceptual, and psychometric problems, psychological measures are at any given point are found to be less appropriate for assessing dental care in children. Therefore, it is believed that behavioral measure is not always ideal, but unfortunately the only available technique for assessing the dental.
So we have Dr. Nair has briefed us with the general anesthesia procedures and the sedation and the application, the non-validity or the inappropriateness of the behavior rating scales. So I would just want to wonder if general anesthesia would help us in the follow-up visits, just in case of a fractured filling or a dislodged crown. So how would we be dealing with the child, when we have a challenging behavior, and maybe the first time we escape and sedate the child and put under subjective anesthesia, but how would the child be trained or behaviorally acceptable in the follow-up visit? So because we all know dental oral health care is not a one-day's job; it is a subsequent dynamic kind of relationship. So for the establishment of that, we need to understand the child and the underlying cause for this kind of behavior. So there is a clinical entity, much diagnosed entity, which is known as oral aversion, though it is underrated. We would understand what it is. This is basically a reluctance or refusal of food or anything which is around the mouth to the child. So these are the children who are, categorized most often under Frankel's negative, definitely negative category. But we do not know the reason for such kind of behavior. So the further slides would help us understand. For any clinical applicability, it is very important that we know the background, theoretical background, and thoroughly implement it in the clinical practice. So oral aversion is basically the kind of resistance to any kind of stimuli which is put around the mouth, be it food, toothbrushes, or anything. So how would, in a normal scenario, in everyday day-to-day life, as a child's parent or the child's caregiver would deal with the feeding issues in a child? Now, why we are going in synchronization with the feeding issues and the resistance to the dental treatment? Because they revolve around the oromotor region. So how would you do? Because this again is a daily living activity. So what we have observed is most often the parents would visit the pediatrician and then thereby to a pediatric occupational therapist, oromotor therapist. And so what do? They actually introduce the child to a messy play therapy wherein the child gets to expose to the textures, the sight, the smell, and gradually, so you can see the chart there in the, the kind of flow chart. So that is how a hierarchy is developed, and the child gets sensitized and finally starts accepting and overcoming his feeding issues. So likewise, when we are dealing children of challenging behavior at the dental operatory, or if we get the concerns from the parents about the behavioral troubles which happens during the toothbrushing. So obviously we can always follow the sequential oral sensory approach as pertaining to the oral hygiene measures, which we would be seeing further. Now, so we have understood that these children are just not behaviorally challenged, but they are sensitively challenged. So how do you do this? If the child was able to behave well, definitely the child would have behaved well. So rather than joining the chaos and when a little people are overwhelmed by these big emotions of overwhelming sensory issues, it is our job to share our calm, try to understand the reason behind this and not join their chaos. So in the subsequent slides, I think the co-presenter would be explaining us about the normal development of a child so that we know how is this issue arising during the development.
About the development of a child as a whole, and this can be broadly categorized into 5 different domains, such as the physical, social, emotional, sensory, cognitive, and the communicative domains. The developmental needs of the children, including those with disabilities, can be secured by intentionally providing opportunities for individual domains. We will be elaborating only on the physical and the sensory domains in this presentation. And we also would like to emphasize the interrelatedness and the interdependence of developmental domains and the processes. These developmental domains are linked not only with one another, but also with factors such as cultural, social relationships, experience, physical health, and mental health, and also the brain functioning. Children with disabilities need to be able to explore and interact with objects and environment to support their physical development. And the domain of physical development involves the biological and physical development, which includes gross motor and fine motor skills, and also addresses growth and physical activity. The motor skills allow children to make purposeful movements and learn the physical characteristics of self and environment. Talking about the sensory awareness, this is a phenomenon of experience, not a characteristic of perception. And the basis of all learning for babies is their sensory systems of touch, taste, smell, hearing, and sight. So the sensory awareness becomes the direct focus on some specific sensory aspects of the body or outer or inner environment. For example, when we are thirsty, if we drink Coke, that is not sensory awareness. But while we drink the Coke, the feeling of cold tingliness on the tongue, that is the sensory. Moving on to the sensory domain, this includes the 7 senses of the senses, starting from the vestibular sense, which starts as early as the 5th week in utero and followed by taste, smell, touch, and proprioception, extending up to the 7th week and ending with sight and hearing senses, which end at 22nd week in utero. Often thought of as separate categories, the senses are actually integrated systems that overlap and sometimes conflict with each other. This sensory domain develops in 2 separate trajectories, dependent on development of activity or the development driven by stimulus. The ability to recognize and interpret sensory stimuli serves as the basis for understanding, learning, and knowing a particular action or reaction, which plays a major role in physical, social, emotional communication and cognitive development of a child. We are all aware of our 5 senses such as sight, smell, taste, hearing, and touch, but children have 3 additional senses such as the balance and also the body awareness. The interoception is the 8th sense, which is known as what is going on inside our body. This is an internal sensory system of the body, and many children who are on the autism spectrum have difficulty processing everyday sensory information. Any of the senses may be either over or undersensitive or both, and at different times. A child with sensory processing difficulties usually finds it difficult to filter out sensory stimulation and can easily feel overwhelmed or anxious or distressed. These sensory differences affect and influence the overall behavior, which can have a profound effect on the child. This is a homunculus, and it illustrates the concept of representation of the body lying within the neurological map, that is the brain. The amount of cortex devoted is not proportional to that region's surface area or volume, but rather how richly innervated that region is. As you can see, the mouth and hands are the biggest compared to the rest of the body. I will not be going into the details of this representation as a whole different discussion altogether. The mouth has a rich somatosensory innovation, and oral somatosensory awareness refers to the somatic sensations arising within the mouth. And to the information these sensations provide about the state and structure of the mouth itself and the objects placed inside the mouth. The somatosensory information from the oral tissues plays an important role in the motor control for eating. Homunculi were created to show how differently our bodies are represented within our brains, based on the motor processing and sensory processing for different anatomical regions of the body. The mouth has a rich somatosensory innovation, and oral somatosensory awareness refers to the somatic sensations arising within the mouth and to the information these sensations provide about the state and structure of the mouth itself and the objects inside the mouth. This somatosensory information from the oral tissues plays an important role in the motor control for eating and speech. Basically, we are conscious of what we put in our mouth and how we status within the somatosensory system, and an evaluative quality within the oral somatosensory awareness is referred to as somasthesis. The oral tissues are among the most richly innervated of any in the human body in terms of the number and variety of receptors that they contain. A striking feature of oral somatosensory awareness is the general state of affective feeling within the entire mouth and the apparent absence of any particular stimuli. Everyone recognizes, for example, that the mouth can feel fresh, clean, dirty, dry, and so on. These sensations have a systemic quality. They are fully localized and appear to include the entire oral envelope.
So that was a very great explanation on neuropsychiatry by Dr. Nair. And so the reason the homunculus showed the large mouth in one place and the hands in another place definitely encouraged me to pick the one developmental theory, the behavioral theory in particular, that is the Paget's theory of sensory motor stage, because that deals with the sensory and motor stages. It is of course divided. I would not go into the undergraduate theoretical part. It would increase the boring, lecture. So I would just focus on the sensory motor. So since Dr. Nair has spoken about the sensory development, and we did see that vestibular senses have been one of the first senses as early as in 5th month in utero. So I would be coordinating with the sensory with this motor development, which happens again at as early as from birth to 2 years of age. So most of the exploration and the development, maximum exploration, or the child understands the world around it by the coordination of those senses along with the motor abilities. So we would be subcategorizing the sensory motor period into further 6 substages, that is the reflexive mechanisms or the schemes. Primary, that's about primary circular reactions, secondary circular reactions, coordination. So all this you see, the reflexive schemes are seen from first to 4 months, then 4 to 8 months. They have a period of about 4 months gap. So the secondary circular reactions you see about 8 to 12, and likewise. So what does the child do? Initially, the child has to understand the world around it by exploring through the mouth. So anything he gets into the mouth, he purposely he gets to see through the sight. He tries to pick purposefully from his hands. Now, hands and mouth are these two important regions for these development at this stage. So he tries to explore the world around him with this kind of purposeful exploration by picking up stuff, sometimes even the non-food items, and trying to understand the texture, and that is how he understands. But then if this oral seeking behavior persists beyond 8 months of age, then that is an issue, and that is what we see. These situations are usually encountered in children who are developmentally, neurally developmental disorder. So developmental delays happen because the brain and the processing information is not simultaneous. So moving on to the fine motor skills. These fine motor skills are the precise movements or the exact movements of the short or small muscles, basically, which of the fingers and the hands. So as you see, the grasp reflex. The grasp reflex is something which is seen at birth. And then you have the, so we move on to the radial digital and radial palmar reflex. So the child is basically trying to hold, from grasp reflex, he goes to hold the, non-human objects. And from palmar, in radial palmar, what happens is the child grasps in such a way that there is no web space, that is, there's no gap between the palm and the object. And then gradually it, shifts to the radial digital format, which is subsequently by the age of 9 to 12 months, you see the the maturation of the inferior pincer grasp, that is holding with the fingertips. Now, these grasps are very important for our activities of daily living, including our toothbrushing behaviors. Now, that is maturity of this pincer grasp, otherwise known as the Cheerio grasp. Cheerio grasp is basically the Cheerios. The child is able to hold the Cheerio at this particular time. So this grasp is that is why it got its name, it's Cheerio. And the maturity of this pincer grasp is about like 6th or 7th year. That is when most of the dentists you get to hear that the child has to learn to tie its shoelaces. Only then you can leave the child independently for brushing. So most of the parents have been told by their respective pediatric dentists about that. And so we move on to the hand and mouth coordination. So eventually, from the single hand movements as seen at birth, the child starts evolving and move to the bimanual modulation by using the two hands and grasping the thing. So this happens by about 5th month of development, and you should take a note of that oral sensory input is one of the foundation for the oral motor development. So the child is seeing the object, puts in the mouth, and then the texture, the understanding, the tactility develops. Also, it would not be an understatement if told that oral sensory input is one of the quickest way to actually generally regularize the sensory tissue, sensory system of the whole body. So once your oromotor region is in place, then the child may not go to a neurodiverse type of category with sensory processing. So that is why the cues of the developmental milestones have to be keenly and quite accurately observed by the caregivers and the parents. So once you know that the oromotor milestones have been established and going in a format or appropriate manner, then you are, the child is not afflicted with any of the neurodevelopmental or neuromuscular disorders. So these are few of the activities that the child does. Tying the shoelace. This is, of course, one of the activity of daily living. So the child is ready for toothbrushing once he knows the nuances of tying his shoelaces and holding on to his pencils. So these are all the, the radial ulnar which grasps which we have learned. So you need to, if you can assist the child when he walks in, or if you can interview the child's parent, you would know why there is difficulty in the poor dexterity of toothbrushing. Now, also it should be kept in mind about the infantile reflexes, which we have seen in the sensory motor stage of the subcategories. Now, infantile orofacial reflexes are very important protective mechanisms at birth. The nature is gifted us with these reflexes so that the infant who is codependent on their caregivers does not be afflicted with the life-threatening stimuli. So the nature is gifted them with these kind of protective reflexes, as in the rooting reflex. The first reflex which develops is the suck-swallow reflex. Then the rooting reflex, as you see, the mother's breast is being rooted, and the child learns to suckle. Then the biting reflex, gagging reflex, lateral tongue reflex. As the food is moved, the tongue moves. Extrusion reflex is popularly known as the tongue thrust reflex. Palmomental reflex is something wherein you rub the palm of the child and the child opens the mouth. So out of these 7 reflexes, the 2 reflexes which stays for life are the gagging reflex and the the swallow reflex. Basically, the suck reflex will be overtaken by the rotary chewing mechanism. So any of these reflexes, if stay back, is that becomes a cause of concern, and you should immediately meet your pediatrician, followed by your therapists. Now, coming to the suck, swallow, breathe synchrony, this is one of the first oromotor sensory, synchronization which happens, which a child establishes in itself. You know that we've already spoken about the rooting reflex, the sucking reflex, the swallowing reflex. So there is an eye coordination. The eye sees, roots, and grasps the the breasts and then suckles. Now the suckling sometimes can get disturbed if you replace the child with a natural breast with a bottle feeding or some non-nutritive sucking habits. Then you see the deleterious habits developed in a child, which are sometimes even turning into masochistic habit. Masochistic habit is basically the self-injurious habits. So this is a very critical time of sensory development. So that is why most often the pacifiers and the bottle feedings are discouraged at this stage.
In this slide, we will try and address the issue about feeding therapy, as in whether pediatric feeding issues are related to sensory needs or oromotor problems or both. Sensory storm is a term used to describe episodes of sensory turmoil which lead to excessive activity in the sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system. Now, the sensory system involves the various senses telling the taste, sight, smell, and texture of food, whereas the oromotor skills constitute different reflexes that are needed to process that sensory reception. So a majority of professionals maintain that if it appears sensory-based, when a child has a limited diet, eats only certain textures or colors of food, and it appears oromotor in nature when the child cannot chew or manage the bone as well. Herein lies the problem and common misconception about problematic feeders. So feeding challenges are more than just sensory or just oromotor. To put it in simple terms, when a child limits the textures and variety of foods they eat, they limit the growth and development of their oromotor skills. Sensory dysregulation occurs when the nervous system is imbalanced due to excessive sensory input or not enough sensory input. Children who have a high threshold for sensory input can also show signs of dysregulation, but it might look a little different. And as a child with sensory dysregulation, the child may have any of the following, such as uncontrollable laughter, and this is a common movement of movement seekers, and many think this signifies that the child is enjoying it, but it can often mean dysregulation. There is again fast and hard movements. The child speaks very fast with excessive saliva, and sometimes they could just have extremely wet mouths and not drool, and then they're also unable to follow instructions, and the pupils get dilated, and they also speak in a high and shaking pitch. Sensory processing disturbances or sensory integration disorder is a collection of challenges that occur when sensation fails to respond properly to the outside world. It is a complex neurological condition that impairs the normal functioning of a child, and the cause of sensory processing is unknown, but genetics, congenital conditions, and environmental factors, which may either be prenatal or postnatal, are to be blamed. Sensory signals, what are these? One may ask. Sensory signal is a hint, a clue, or an indicator given by a child's behavior or reaction to the environment or surroundings. This includes a child's reaction to social interaction or communication.
So we did see about the sensory dysregulation now. So once the child is sensory dysregulated, it would be difficult for child's daily activities of to operate the activities of daily living independently. So to certain age, the credit can be given for the cognitive skills to be developed. But after an age, even if the child is still codependent on the caregivers, then it is a definite sign that the child needs help from the respective therapists. So the areas basically of independent behavior, we would want the child to live a smooth life, or basic tasks would be eating, feeding, grooming, personal hygiene, which includes our toothbrushing, toileting, and showering. So these activities of child living basically needs few self-care skill sets. Yeah, so the self-care skill sets are in coordination with your sensory motor. So if your neuromuscular and sensory motor activities are in place, then your self-care skills can run smoothly. Otherwise, the child beyond the expected age still continues to not groom himself into the self-care skills. So it's very important that age-appropriate self-care skills are taken care well. So one of the most important self-care skill which we would be focusing is, before that, of course, is the oral self-care skill. So before that, I would want to know that the first 10 years of life are definitely critical for developing these. So anything, even after the child is 10 years and still dependent on the caregivers or the parents, then it is definitely an alarming sign. So these are definitely the signs which are seen in the autism, even ADHD, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, and sensory issue can negatively impact the skill sets. Now, even the motors, the motor ability of memory, the motors have memory, certain memory. So if the motor is not able to operate well with the memory by looking at others, so the imitation and memory learning with the muscles which is incorporated can fail. So this concept is called motor planning. So there are few kind of sensory diet activities which would be required to be intervened by the respective therapists in this place. So coming on to the most important self-help skill, that is the oral care skill. Why we are focusing so much on this is because as it is very difficult to treat the challenging behavior kids or the children with autism or any neurodiverse conditions with the invasive procedures, as we all know. But it is never, not very difficult to implement the preventive strategies so as to not go into the invasive procedures which require the dental, painful kind of drilling and all that. So preventive procedures are very, very important so as to negate the oral diseases and prevent these children to undergo the kind of, the traumatic sensory rich environmental situation which our dental clinic would be providing. So it is definitely important to understand that if the child would be in control of his behavior, then the child would definitely learn to behave. So that if the child is not within the control, that he cannot behave well, it is not beyond his scope. If there is a sensory processing, that is the perception of touch, sight, is not getting processed well and executing well as a good behavior, and the child gets overwhelmed so easily, then it is not the child's fault. So it is, yes, of course, very frustrating to handle children with behavioral challenges, or sometimes they test our patients, they rattle us, but also these are the children who actually eventually inspire us, comfort us, and make us look forward to, and then give us the peace of once we establish the treatment in them, definitely there is a positive attitude. So definitely it is important to get back to know the reasons why the child is behaving, and implement or customize our execution of treatment planning or the approach as to dealing with these children. So if you can't teach children to behave better by making them feel worse, so you need to sit back, calm down, and understand their situation, find out the trigger zones. Now, every parent would know their child better. So investing time in the parenting interview or the parental interview is very, very important and worth the effort, because the parent would know better which color would offend the child, or which taste or which kind of atmosphere would offend the child. Now, these sensory processing disorder kids most often are not behaving the same each day, every moment, and even the triggering stimuli keeps varying. So it is a challenging task at hand, but understanding and talking a lot with parents does help us ace the situation. So that is all about it. So making sense of the situation by actually stopping and assessing and not assuming it's a behavioral disorder. So of course you see conduct disorder behaviors after a certain age. Like if you know the child is conductly not behaving well, that is after like 7 years to 10 years. But initial stages, if the child is hyper responding, then it has to be considered and checked for the sensory issues. The environment change. You have to check if our environment surrounding is exaggerating and overwhelming to the child and change accordingly. And note simultaneously the child's response, because the child responds differently for different stimulus. And even at the same date, same moment, the child may be hyper-responsive and hyper-responsive variation. So you have to be accommodative and be flexible with the approaches. So also keep in handy the sensory strategies and the tools, the replacement or the distractive means. So if once you realize that this is a triggering factor, you tend to replace with another triggering other sensory approach. Now embrace the positive and learn from the moment. So you're learning the child. So each child comes with a lesson to us, and it is never easy. So I feel when I'm treating a child patient, irrespective of the kind of experience I have, I always feel I have an exam to be appearing for, because each child comes with a situation wherein I'm tensed. I don't know if I'm able to accommodate around the child's thing unless I invest the time in understanding or observing, basically. So if you observe, it comes with experience and with time. And of course, the important point is the background knowledge and the experiences. So you have to have a coordination with your therapists. If you're dealing with the special needs children, you need to have a bond. You need to check with the parents, the caregivers, and the therapists with the child, the teachers, the special educators, or sometimes the shadow teachers, which the child will be accompanied to the school. So these are the people who actually give you the 100% information, or maximum information probably, because not everybody gets the 100% information, because the condition is such that you cannot assess and get all, and which shoe to fit in this. So not every you cannot fit the same strategy of behavior management to the same child at different situations. So you need to be accommodative. So that is why I think we are again further understanding
the major challenge for a sensory informed professional in handling a child afflicted with STD is to concentrate on two main issues, one being the somatosensory system and the other being the provision of a sensory rich environment. And for children with heightened sensitivity or sensory processing challenges, a visit to a dentist can be daunting, not just for the parent or the carer, as well as for the child. Therefore, preparing beforehand can help the experience run more smoothly and also help get the treatment done effectively. More about the sensory environment will be spoken by Dr. Ghosia in the coming slide. There are three sensory systems that all receive input in the oral cavity or mouth. The tactile touch, orally the tactile sense receives input when anything touches the lips, tongue, gums, and cheek. The tongue in particular has a lot of tactile receptors to give feedback on the way something feels or its temperature. The proprioception or deep pressure, the jaw provides a ton of deep pressure input, and chewing and sucking gives a lot of input to this sensory system. Now coming to the third sense, this is the taste. The tongue has tons of receptors that allow it to taste various flavors such as sweet, salty, sour, and spicy. Since oral sensory processing is affected by three senses, the child could be over, under, or not processing any one or all of these senses, which makes it a unique combination for that particular child, more like a trifecta. The types of oral sensory issues can be broadly categorized into either sensory seekers or sensory avoiders. And if a child is undersensitive to oral stimuli, she may seek out oral stimulation by chewing or sucking on things like pencils, fingers, hairs, and clothing, which contribute to dysphagia, increased drool, and mouth stuffing. She may have trouble chewing and or drinking from a straw. And also, this is a sign of increased sensory threshold and under responsibility. The kids fall under the category of sensory seekers. Whereas the avoiders, if a child is oversensitive to oral stimuli, he or she may avoid anything to do with their mouth. Toothbrushing may make them gag. They may be resistant to trying new foods and or avoid certain textures of foods. And they even avoid eating with utensils, which may upset them because of the noise. And also, these kids are often described as picky eaters and may stick to a pretty limited diet they are comfortable with. A point to note here is the presence of these behaviors does not confirm a child to have a sensory processing disorder. Only a trained professional can make this diagnosis.
So going by this say, it is very easy to understand that sensory avoiders are the most challenging children to be treating because they do not like any senses. So any exaggerated senses, any simple sense which would otherwise be accommodative in the natural healthy system would be a challenging here. Now coming on to the oral proprioceptive sensory input. So as Dr. Nair has already spoken, the jaws and the gums, the mechanoreceptors on these region, help us to propriocept, that is making sense of the substance into the mouth. So stereodiagnosis, the shape of the particular object into the mouth is stereodiagnosis. That is called a stereodiagnosis, and proprioception is basically the pressure, which is deep pressure, which is seek. That these children are constantly seeking proprioception, and which leads to the mouthing items, or sometimes called as sneaky chewers. So they tend to eat or put anything in the mouth because that helps to a certain extent or to certain age, as being told in the sensory motor developmental theory. And this is a part of normal development, and the child usually tries this as a means of self-soothing or regulation process. And it is very important for a survival reflex because that is kind of giving it cues to understand which is threatening and which is not threatening, and explore the world and enhances its stimulation. This should reduce by 18 months. If it sustains, then it would lead to many deleterious oral habits, like so the oral stimming, I would want to tell before going on to the oral habits. Now, oral stimming is similar to the general stimming, which happens in the autistic children or neurodiverse kids. Now, this oral stimming is basically when the child becomes overwhelmed, he wants to regulate or modulate his system. So how does the child, he or she does it by continuously seeking or putting things into the mouth. So this can sometimes mimic as toothache, which most parents complain. So they try to they analyze, because most of these children are non-verbal and not very communicable. So each time the child puts fingers into the mouth, the parent tends to assume that the child is doing so because of the tooth pain or some irritant into the mouth. Now this is basically because he or she is trying to do oral stimming or oral fixation, and this fidgety behavior is basically a modulation of the general stimming which is seen. Now this eventually leads to the masochistic or self-injurious habits also. So in general stimming, what you see is most often we witness, which all of us know, is the hand clapping, rocking, and banging heads, wheel spinning and tapping ears, scratching, even screaming, snapping fingers. Now there's a very beautiful poem on stimming. So the guidelines for stimming is, it is regular, for the neurodiverse kids, it is definitely a process of regulation when they are overwhelmed by any of the excessive sensory outputs they're getting from the environment. If they do not do this, they don't know how to regulate. So calmly, we cannot stop the stimming, but we can redirect or replace the stimming by engaging their hands. The hands, like I already told, that these are the coordination. The coordination of hands and mouth is like important. So engage their hands by Rubik square. And as per the dental healthcare point of view, if the general stimming is not disturbing your dental work at the dental operatory, it is advised to not stop the stimming, but redirect it by engaging the hands with something interesting for the child and continue your work. But never to stop it. Be respectful for the stimming. Let the child regulate his emotions. So like I told you, the deleterious oral habits which we encounter, despite all the efforts we do in the mechanotherapy or the punitive therapy, which the cheek biting, the child is trying to seek the sensation of the cheek, the proprioception. So that ultimately leads to cheek biting, and the cheek biter prevention habit appliances is that bruxism is very common, teeth grinding. That is because the jaw muscles are seeking constant pressure or proprioception, lip biting, So if we have the appliances, so to certain extent, till the therapist or the occupational therapist modulates these, stimming habits or the habits into a, reduction formula. Till then, to prevent the child from self-injury, we could intervene as dentists and prevent the injury to the child by the appliances, protective appliances. There is tongue thrusting, retained, that is the retained infantile swallow, thumb sucking, and of course the tongue bite and chewing habits. So this is because of the excessive sensory overload, and we in short can call it as an intense world syndrome. So another condition, like I told you about the bruxism, is now off late, therapist, the occupational therapist Kate Schoen is related to global hyposensitivity to the bruxism or the teeth grinding. So it is just not about the hyposensory nature of the oral muscles, but in general, when the child is not able to modulate or recognize the muscles, then the child starts jittering or grinding the teeth so as to regulate his general body. Now, how is the child regulating the general body is not very easy to understand. So most often the children come with bruxism or the chewing habits. So we try to overrule the deworming or the worms inside the stomach, then the upper respiratory tract infections, or sometimes even the digital screen exposure. But then we tend to forget that this could be another form of oral stimming. So when the child has low muscle tone and he tries to seek the awareness of these muscles, that is when the jittering or the bruxism happens. So it is very important to refer these kids to the physiotherapists or the occupational therapist to disassociate the orofunctional muscles from the general muscles. So this leads to occlusal facets and grinding of the teeth. Then to modulate this, we have few oromotor play activities. It has to be noted that oromotor zone is the most established and most advanced developed zone in these children as early as by 3 years of age. So by 3 years of age, if the child is having any problem in the speech or swallowing, sucking, or any of the normal habits, especially the spitting. So if you encounter these children, you tend to have these children keeping the food in the mouth for long hours and parents complaining that the child is, so that is when you will have to initiate oromotor activities. Of course, we are not the authority into it. So we refer the child to the occupational oromotor therapists so as to attend to the address, because constant keeping food in the mouth would lead to definitive dental caries or early childhood caries. So these are few of the activities which would be initiated by the therapist's fraternity, and give the child as a, the sensory diet we call. So that coming on to the oral sensitivity and toothbrushing behavior. Of course, oral zone is the most sensory rich zone, and it's not less to say or underestimating to say that toothbrushing in itself is a behavior. So it depends on how the patient perceives or the child perceives the sensations around the mouth during these behavior. Now, moving on, to understand that toothbrushing is also a sensory experience, because there is deep pressure, proprioception which is happening, and movement of the body has to be stable when the child has to learn toothbrushing techniques, because the whole body stability allows the mobility, maximum mobility into the oral cavity. So if the child is not stable, you have to make the child sit or place the child in a stable position to initiate the oral hygiene measures. Then tactility, of course, the child may not like the texture of the toothpaste. Offensive, he might find the smell, the taste, and even the color of the paste offensive. Even the environment of the place where the child is practicing the toothbrushing behavior in itself can be a challenging atmosphere. So sometimes the visions, the sounds around the oral hygiene measure activities should be taken care if the child is offensive to the toothbrushing habits. So it is very important to start our toothbrushing stimulation as early as, like how the occupational therapists start pre-feeding, they attend to the feeding issues by pre-feeding programs. So it is our, when the parents come to us with problems, it's important for us to educate them about the pre-toothbrushing stimulation. That is the oral sensory motor stimulation, which is a 15-minute stimulation. Basically, it happens periorally, that is outside the mouth, and then gradually you enter the mouth. This happens as early as the gum pad age. when you do it in the gum pad age, the child resolutes or resolves the biting reflex, which is not seen eventually when the child grows. Now that biting reflex becomes a challenging condition to handle for a dentist who's operating with the aerotar and whatever machinery into the mouth. So it is very important that the parents at the early stages are educated about this sensitization or pre-tooth brushing stimulation after every feed of in the breastfeed or the bottle feed. Now the oral sensory stimulation programs are of course these have to be implemented, done prior and after every meal. So I have written the instructions there. We can try the instructions, or we can as well educate the parents, or simply ask them to visit to a therapy session from the occupational therapist, so that the parents learn properly how to do. So we are moving, we are never crossing the midline. We start from the philtrum of the midline and then move backwards. So we start the upper jaw and then come to the lower jaw. And crossing the midline is a big no, because that will offend the child. And using cold water during the procedure might alarm the child and alert. So he might become hyperactive. So room temperature water should be done, and it should always be a firm touch. Feather-light touch can irritate the child and fidget the child. So a firm touch to give the sensory diet to the child who's to what it is seeking. Now, transitions in the development of toothbrushing skills itself is a big thing. So initiation actually happens, which is totally dependent on the caregiver at this time. So that is the first stage, and then you gradually move to the assisted toothbrushing. So that is the parent tooth-led brushing, and here there could be a poor technique or little motor dexterity. So you need to understand this, and this is paving way gradually to a independent toothbrushing behavior, and by the age of 8-9 years. So that is why we learned about the fine motor skills, because these are the transition stages which we see, and we have to likewise train the child accordingly. Now, toothbrushing behavior itself, as per occupational therapists, is includes about 13 to 16 steps, from opening the lid of the paste to wetting the toothbrush to closing the lid. So all these require fine motor skills and your fingers and the wrist approach. So if the fine motor coordination is not very good, the child tends to have a poor dexterity. So this has to be noted and taught. So when a clinician, the dental clinician, tries to teach oral hygiene instructions, because most often we see parents coming and asking us, doctor, please teach the child how to do it. Maybe we are not doing it. But there is a difference. If the child is practicing a poor technique, you can always do a forward chaining of teaching by allowing the child to imitate you when you're doing the oral hygiene instruction method. But if the child is with poor dexterity, it is important that you use the tool of prompting. That is hand-led prompting, which is a physical form of prompting, and guide the child through steps as to how to initiate and carry on. This happens in a sequence of period. So we see that in the subsequent slides, like hand-over-hand prompting or guidance technique, wherein the two brushes are used. One is to open the mouth so that the child doesn't bite, and then you move around the toothbrushes. Then we have in the market about the grasps. So the children might not have good grasps. To improve the grasp brushes, so you have the grasp hold. Then you have the triple brushes, and triple brushes also come with the sonic, the ultrasonic thing with the changeable brush heads. So these can also be used for gum stimulation, because the child is seeking for proprioception. So the gum stimulation can happen very easily with these triple head brushes. So two brush technique and one large handle if the parent is using one large handle and one small handle. So these are the brushing techniques which has to be implemented. Now I strongly personally recommend most often the dry tooth brushing technique, because dry tooth brushing technique completely minuses your the other sensations of taste, tactility, but keeps the proprioception, which is very important. So the proprioception is done, and the foamy mouth is avoiding the foamy mouth experience. And also the advantage is that you can carry it out in your bedroom, watching TV when the child is distracted. You need not have an atmosphere of the typical washroom or the daily routine room where the child is extremely offended. So you can do as a fun activity, maybe in the playground or as watching TV or when the child is playing. So this will familiarize the child with the brushing behavior. So this was introduced by in 1992. Also, when the child is medically ill or at bed rest, and then you don't want the child to play in water for long, and so after the medicines, especially to avoid the medication caries, we tend to do, at least I suggest that the child is brushed mechanically properly and give him some water to drink, so that there is no kind of sticky layer onto the teeth. So I strongly recommend, and this can be an extended form of Wilbarger's deep tactile intense therapy, which we would be subsequently seeing in the slides, which is a sort of sensory, diet. So play-based toothbrushing and flossing behavior. Now, play is the highest form of research, and the maximum learning happens during play. So the slimy tooth play, toys or the play-based toys the child can use and get used to the slimy nature, which he finds gross during brushing. So the paste can be very offensive and very glossy to these children who are very sensitized towards the sensations or the texture of the toothpaste, smell or flavors. Also, the dexterity of the child can be improved with the play dough, so as to use the dental floss. So that can be mastered only by the age of 10 years. Before that, the child might just attempt and get familiarized probably. And then moving on to the oral sensitization program. So I'll just give a gist on it about how to do. So move your hand symmetrically towards the mouth. So basically you're going periorally. So you're going outside the mouth and then reaching the mouth. So next, and this has to be done in firm pressure. Of course, you need training to carry out these techniques. You need to first get trained yourself from the therapist, the oromotor occupational therapist. I emphasize again, we are no authority to do it alone on our own, especially to the children. So knowing the information so that you can seek for the same training is very important. So introduce, so you go orally and then you introduce the child's finger in the mouth by placing towards the lip. So you're going towards the mouth and then you introduce the finger into the mouth, rolling inside at the upper jaw, and then you massage the gums gradually. So this is how you sensitize as a parent, as a caregiver, and at the infancy stage, if you can start, it would be very, very helpful, and this regulates the whole system as a whole. So furthermore, talking on the toothbrushing sensitization, this is basically toothbrushing sensitization. So how are you going to introduce the child to the toothbrushes? So first you're just showing so that the child tolerates the brush around your mouth, and then you touch only his upper teeth, and then you introduce the child to the paste. So then gradually the child will move on to the next stages. So, the child has a strong defensive mechanism because oral sensory organ is such that he tries to combat, and the resultant will be the biting reflex, which we all have experienced, I'm sure, if we've been dealing with children. So the defensiveness can be combated by desensitization. There are some foods which can calm the child, and there are some foods which can alert the child. So parents can be instructed to give certain foods just before the dental appointment, so that your dental appointment goes smooth. So calming is something with warm drinks. This is very handy, and chewing the gums before the child enters the dental operatory or before the scheduled appointment. So anything crispy can alert the child, and then the child might not be as expected cooperation as in the dental operatory. So before coming to the dental office, the child has to be shown the social stories or the introduction as to where the child is going, familiarization, get acquainted visit. The parents of the special needs children or the neurodiverse children can visit. The parents can seek appointment first by the dental operatory, and the dental team can be prepared. And also it should be kept in mind that with the current pandemic situation, we're all using the personal protective equipment, but definitely with definite universal precautions, it's important also to not neglect the emotionally protective environment. So the child has to be emotionally protected, and so the dental team has to come into picture, warm and patient. So each child has to be given that custom kind of treatment plan. So this is Determined program, which is an article published by David Tessini. It is in the Journal of International Journal of Pediatric Dentistry. This he customized particularly for the autism children afflicted with autism. So wherein he says the first contact of the eye, even for a second, if the dentist could maintain or win over for 1 single second of a contact, then half the battle is won. So we know that the child. So we all are familiar that the children with autism do not have eye contact. They do not, they are most often non-verbal. So gaining a seconds of eye contact itself is an achievement, and this can happen with gradual familiarization. Positional modeling, so making the child sit in one place and basically do a modeling in person or video modeling, and counting framework. So you're gradually going step by step. Basically, it is the combination of all the behavior management techniques which is taught in the pediatric dentistry undergraduate level. So I would not go into detail about it. But then the determined program, why is it called so? I would tell it is about dividing the skills, demonstrating the skill, drill the skill, and delight the learner with elegant repetition. So you basically, it is gist of tell, show, do. But so the reference can be seeked and the article can be read for the same. And so we know, I have been telling time and again that oral zone itself is a very sensory rich organ or the part of the body. And then we are also, even Dr. Nair has been explaining that we have two challenges which have to be taken care of, that is the oral somatosensory and the sensory rich environment. So we know that the dental clinic has many reasons: the suction, noise, and the aeroter, the sudden gush of water, and the light which is put on the face without the consent of the child. So it is very advised that everything has to be told, and if possible, you can take permission. The permission may not be verbal, but you can get non-verbal cues. So looking at that, so it's always important to be respectful for these children. That wins half the situation. So when you're asking them, you're treating them as an individual entity, as an important entity. Most oftentimes, when the child is in front or sitting on the chair, I would hardly bother about the people around me. I would just focus on the child and be as obedient and as flexible to the child's needs. So it's very important before placing the child, introduce the child to the environments, let him get familiarized. So let him not get alarmed and then react. So coming on to the most important thing or the challenge which we face in the dental clinic is the gravitational insecurity. Now, most of the neurodiverse kids have this issue of the vestibular input. So gravitational insecurity is basically they're insecure or they have the tendency to fall. They are scared of falling. And to understand this, we should know that one of the most important relationship we have with as soon as we are born, it is strange to know that the most important relationship a child develops as soon after birth is with that of the Mother Earth. So it is as primal as that of a mother-child relationship. The child inevitably is closely associated with the gravity, even if we are not noticing. And the child feels secure if he is grounded, and he feels insecure on the swings. Gradually, of course, in a healthy sensory system, the child overcomes this with rocking, cradling, and swings, and all those. But unfortunately, in neurodiverse kids, the vestibular input has to be done more. So which goes underdiagnosed. So this has to be attended. Once this basically creates a problem, because if you don't want the child and you start adjusting the child on a dental chair, so he gets scared and he starts yelling, and there you lose the child's trust. That's very important to know. And then also it is important to understand this. The child's first play in as soon as the child is born is with that of the gravity. The child learns to keep his or her head straight and put the head down, play with the ball. So there's a very intense relationship with the gravity which goes unnoticed. So as I always think, privilege is most invisible to the people who have it. So we take things for granted. We do not know vestibular input is such a basic or the primal relationship. It is as some of the psychiatrists have related the gravity with relationship of the child to that of the mother and the child. And vestibular input is basically the otolithic organ, that is the organs or the ear cells. So it is to do with these ear cells.
A total of about 5% to 16% of typically developing children have sensory processing disorders. More than 93% of autism spectrum kids have sensory processing disorder, and about 40 to 60% with attention deficit hyperactivity disorders have sensory processing disorder. So it is important to make a chair-side checklist involving the visual, hearing, and touch aspects. Now, the key points are no two kids with sensory processing disorders are same, and sensory processing can vary from day to day or even from moment to moment. The child may probably have difficulty with more than one input, that is touch or with the first. The second checklist is audio checklist, and then in this hearing, we need to turn off unnecessary equipment to reduce the noise. We have to place a towel between each. The second checklist is audio checklist, and then in this hearing, we need to turn off unnecessary equipment to reduce the noise. We have to place a towel between instruments so that it may reduce the contact noise. And also, we have a sound machine set to calming sounds. We make sure all cell phones are in silent mode. The second checklist is audio checklist, and then in this hearing, we need to turn off unnecessary equipment to reduce the noise. We have to place a towel between instruments so that it may reduce the contact noise. And also, we have a sound machine set to calming sounds. We make sure all cell phones are in silent mode, and then we try and avoid the agitation of the child by multiple stimuli, which is an extraneous cause for distraction. The second checklist is audio checklist, and then in this hearing, we need to turn off unnecessary equipment to reduce the noise. We have to place a towel between instruments so that it may reduce the contact noise. And also, we have a sound machine set to calming sounds. We make sure all cell phones are in silent mode, and then we try and avoid the agitation of the child by multiple stimuli, which is an extraneous cause for moving to the final checklist. Tactile. This helps a child detect light touch, deep pressure, texture, temperature, vibration, and pain. And therefore, to enhance this, we can add a soft cover to the dental chair, prepare assisted equipment like weighted blankets, fidget toys, vibrating mini massagers, or even examination gloves for the child to wear or hold. And now we also need to check for jewelry such as rings and watches that may make abrasive contact with the child. And we have to avoid using a soft touch and instead use a firm touch. And the securing a child in the dental chair, it provides a sensation of deep pressure hug. Continuing with the tactile checklist, a dental appointment can be especially difficult for children with developmental disabilities due to the child's limited ability to comprehend the objective of such an appointment. The reason being the unfamiliarity of the dental environment and the sensitivity to sensory stimuli presented in the regular dental settings. As we all know that the oral health is an integral part to both physical and psychological well-being of the child. The goal of the sensory adapted dental environment is to provide a positive dental experience for such children. And also the integration and incorporation of sensory adapted environment can help both children with autism spectrum disorders and typically developing children to reduce dental anxiety and distress. This results in improved behavior, making it a win-win situation for But we know children have more than 5 senses. The whole objective is to support those sensory needs by having a general sensory processing support. By having a general sensory processing support plan, which normalizes the oral input. Others should engage children in movements, create a calming environment. The language used should contain words that express pleasantness, friendship, and concern. We increase focus and attention by sitting and speaking at the eye level, which allows for friendlier atmosphere. We build the stamina and interest by engaging the child in fun activities such as swimming, deep pressure massages, etc., and finally contributing to building an inclusive community.
So I would firstly, suggest a dental appointment after a therapy session, that is the physiotherapy or the occupational therapy. As Dr. Nair has told in the previous slide, that the general sensory regulation. So general sensory regulation would eventually help us to calm down the child and give a positive response in the dental clinic. So this is another slide which adds on to the sensory diet activity, which is the Wilbarger protocol, as introduced by Patricia. She's again an occupational therapist, so she does the joint compressions. She suggests the joint compressions, especially from the extremities away from the oral cavity and gradually moving towards the oral cavity. And then she further goes on to introduce something called as oral tactile technique, which we have seen in the previous slide. So it is basically the trigger zones are calmed down away from the tooth first, from the extremities, and then then moves towards the oral region. So these are few of the references I could jot down, which I have referred in the presentation. And I would end the presentation with this quote, that children are content with the least of things. For them, it is the same, be it gold or mud. And the gist of the presentation, I hope, was helpful for the the audience who actually joined. I would acknowledge the audience whoever joined and sat through the the event so peacefully, because this is a topic which is not very connectable to all. Unlike the other general dentistry topics. So, but if somebody sat through the whole presentation and wanted to improve, how to practice or professionally be efficient in dealing with children who are coming with the challenging behaviors, so I would give my great acknowledgements to them, and thank you, Mr. Sunil, for the patience and few technical snacks in between the presentation. So I make a leave.
Thank you very much. It was awesome. So I think you have stopped sharing. You can please put your video on because we would like you to also accept our thanks. You have to put your video on, madam, and stop the share, screen share. Yeah, but the screen share is still on, ma'am. Now it is okay, right? Thank you. So I think you must be quite exhausted, ma'am. You are on a continuous roll. There are a lot of encomiums, full appreciation, and you have had doctors coming from Qatar and Middle East also, because we had propagated the message. And I think all of them are very pleased with your excellent presentation. Particularly, you gave practical insights on how to deal with the chairside situations involving these special cases. So, ma'am, one point is, what do you feel about the different oral care products which have to be used for such special children?
So, since these children are having problems with the swallowing reflex, it's not, the oromotor reflex is not very matured. So, I would recommend something which is edible, which has the feasibility of edibleness. The parents would ask, if the child swallows this, is it threatening? So I would recommend something which is non-threatening to the child, even it is edible basically. Okay. So I think you have a product which I've been, speaking on a lot about it. So Enafix is something which I would recommend because it remineralizes, and also at the same time it is safe for children, and it enhances or prevents the cavities or demineralization of the cavities. Yeah, and also I think you have triple head brushes also. I did notice that you have triple head brushes with the change, you have the facility of changing the heads, unlike the one which is available abroad.
Yeah, correct. So thank you, ma'am. Vis-a-vis the mouthwashes or oral rinses, what do you feel is the better option for these kids?
Since the cognitive ability is still not strong, so I would personally not recommend any mouthwash as yet for these children.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Then one more point, ma'am. With these, what do you say, challenged children, or how can I say, special requirement children, what are the type of oral care complications that generally show up? From your clinical experience, I'm asking.
Sir, what are the types of?
What are the main types of oral care complications that come up?
One thing is the child behaviorally is challenged, of course. The complication as such, because I think the dentist, if not confident, should not try certain procedures, certain invasive procedures, because there's a threat of aspiration of stainless steel crown or the files. So the files have to have a long dental floss. Even your bite block should have a dental floss, which I often miss out. So those things, even the crown placement should have a dental floss as length as of your elbow length, basically. So there are a few precautions, and of course it needs a lot of patience at hand. Rather than getting frustrated with, because the challenge is basically with us. How long can we sustain is what matters.
So a child may require more than a sitting.
Yes, sometimes yes. So once the child is in your rapport, once the child gains, he forgives a few hurtful experiences. So even if you prick a child after building a rapport, I think the child tends to forgive, and that's how parent-child relationship is, isn't it? So once even the parents hurt or discipline the child tends to accept it. So the same, we have to become foster parents to the child we are treating, basically. Otherwise, we fail to do justice.
I think you are doing an awesome job, ma'am, because it's a challenging thing to treat such patients, and you have the patience to treat such patients. So thank you very much. So I also acknowledge the audience members also. I also acknowledge Dr. Nair sir, who has joined us all the way from KSA. So thank you. So with your kind permission, if you have any words to say to the audience, we can say, then I'll close the webinar.
I think it's just a big thank you to the audience as well as the organizers, sir.
You're right. So we'll be in touch, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And yes, Dr. Ashwini also has just commented. It was a wonderful session. Thank you so much, ma'am. I'll be closing.
Thank you.
Thank you.